the best way to start off is just to do what you can. Begin with the way that you can begin with a process that makes sense to you and a time commitment that you can commit to right now, and then build from there.
Welcome to Forward, presented by Story North. On this show, we document architects, the builders, and the visionaries who are shaping the future of northeastern Minnesota. I'm your host, Kevin Jacobsen. My guest today is a specialist in rural revitalization. Shawn Herhusky wears many hats: community developer, nonprofit leader, policy fellow. But his real job is breaking the doom loop. He was the architect behind Revive Virginia, proving that small towns don't have to wait for a savior to save themselves. He understands that housing, workforce, and culture aren't separate problems. They are one complex system that requires a new kind of operating manual. Shawn, thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you for having me. And again, I just want to comment that you are in charge of now writing my bios from this point in time forward. That was absolutely fantastic. Thank you, Kevin.
I'll be waiting for the check in the mail. Shawn, let's start with the Revive Virginia project. It became a model for how a small town wakes up. The easy narrative is that you need a massive grant to change a downtown. You have proved otherwise. So what is the specific lesson here that you learned about how locals can really kickstart change without having to wait for permission from the capital?
I think you've touched on it perfectly with that comment. Revive Virginia is a stunning example of what a large group of incredibly motivated volunteers with limited resources can accomplish in a small town. And Revive has been an absolute pleasure to be a part of because it continues to evolve and grow over time, meeting the needs of the current economic situation, really. We began back in the day fixing up downtown businesses, essentially, or defunct businesses, I should say, locations that were available. And we would work with the city of Virginia, and we would go through the process of gutting and rebuilding those businesses and essentially selling them for a loss to individuals just to get a business in that location. Revive has sort of evolved since then into what you think of Revive as now, which is things like TEDx Silver Lake or the Food Truck Festival or some of the activities that we do now. But in the end, what it's always been about from the very beginning is a group of motivated people who aren't economic development experts, who don't have a lot of money, essentially coming through and making a difference in their community with, as you mentioned, Kevin, very limited resources.
So the question I have for you is why take on that burden, that responsibility to revive Virginia?
Oh, sure. Your downtown is essentially the heart of your city. It's the economic sort of epicenter of your community. A strong, vibrant downtown reflects on the community and sort of acts as the part of the community that everybody sees. So if you have this strong, brilliant downtown with lots of green space, with not a lot of empty buildings, with a vibrant economy, with businesses that are expanding and growing like Cane Lakes and the Arrowhead and some of the other businesses downtown, it reflects on the city on a whole. It gives people the impression that the city is growing and it's vibrant and that good things are coming. So the city's downtown is a reflection of the city itself.
You said that Revive Virginia has transformed. It has changed over the years. Where do you see it going in the next 5, 10, 15 years?
Sure. The biggest thing is there's a new strategic planning initiative coming up with the city of Virginia, sort of updating the heart of Virginia, which was the older initiative that was going on. So I think Revive will play a key part in that. There's also a new splash pad project that's coming up that we're all very excited about and being a part of that project as well. And then there's the work that we're doing, continuing the work of things like the Food Truck Festival, which continues to grow every year. Originally, we started out with 12 food trucks, one on each street corner pretty much, as a response to COVID-19, bringing people downtown for an outdoor festival, which was allowed at the time. Has now grown to almost 30 trucks, and with a variety of different things going on at the same time. And the one thing that we've noticed with Revive is when we host an event, when we're putting stuff on, when we're doing things, we're also allowing other groups like the VFW, like the Senior Center and stuff like that, to host events at the same time so other events can piggyback off of the success of Revive for their own success. So as we grow, we're noticing that we're encouraging others to grow as well and to participate and to do things similar and advance their nonprofit missions as well as Revive's.
That's wonderful.
So it's almost like our success is breeding additional success.
That's great. Shawn, you often describe our region's challenges, housing, childcare, workforce, as one giant complex system. That can sound overwhelming. So when everything is broken and everything is connected, how do you keep from getting paralyzed? Where do you pull that first thread, so to speak?
Is do something. I know that sounds weird, but action is the key thing that addresses anxiety. If you're feeling like things are overwhelming, especially in the economic times we've had over the last 10 years, some of the things we've heard about on the range, some of the mining situations that are going on, action, do something, anything, no matter what it is, even if it's bringing a bag of dog food to the dog shelter, even if it's contributing in some meaningful way that's meaningful to you, the way to address paralysis is always even the smallest action.
So to that point, Shawn, what is the right balance between waiting for the big bet from the Capitol, from lawmakers, and just doing the gritty homegrown work?
Well, at some point in time, you're going to need assistance from some of these larger organizations. But I mean, when we were doing that original project with the buildings, well, we'd received a grant from the IRRR in order to make that happen. But then a lot of that work was sweat equity as well. Us going in there, actually doing the work and making that happen. So I think the best way to start off is just to do what you can. Begin with the way that you can begin with a process that makes sense to you and a time commitment that you can commit to at right now, and then build from there. The other thing too is to try to find like-minded people who are also motivated by the same things that motivate you, and to bring them into the conversation and to create sort of a welcoming organization that brings in different people's points of view and lets them contribute in a way that they feel is meaningful. One of the things with Revive is, we have these meetings, but you don't have to attend the meeting to participate in Revive. We have some people that only help out at the food truck festival or only help out at certain events, but they don't come to the meetings on a regular basis. They're not contributing in that way. And we welcome them. We welcome their participation in whatever way that they feel comfortable in order to participate with us. And I think
Sure.
that's the success of Revive, is bringing in volunteers by meeting them sort of in that halfway and not demanding of them more than they're capable of giving at this time.
Got it. Shawn, you sit on a number of boards. You're a Humphrey Policy Fellow, and you're on the
Mm-hmm.
ground. Theoretically, you bridge that gap between the state capitol and Main Street. So how do you translate the local messy reality of the range into policy language that actually moves the needle at the state level?
One of the things that I took away from the Humphrey Institute is they had a saying, good politics makes good policy. And I think that's sort of it. If you can make a strong strategic argument for why your views or what you want to accomplish, why it's going to translate into good politics, that strengthens your argument considerably. We're also lucky because we live in Northeast Minnesota, where I feel like our representatives and our lawmakers are much more accessible than some of our Twin Cities counterparts. And there's no reason on earth why you can't message their legislative aide and be like, I'd like to have coffee. Just give me 20 minutes at Starbucks in Hermon. Sorry, Caribou. Oh, I'm going to get in trouble for that one. Caribou Coffee in Hibbing, And most of the time we're able to reach out and talk to those individuals. I think the disconnect is people think that they need knowledge of public policy. They need all this history. They need to have a certain type of education or be a certain type of person in order to meet with these individuals. And no, you have the right to express, you have the right to express your opinion to them, talk to them, tell them about your concerns and stuff like that. And most of the time they're more than willing to listen. I think it's more just in our own heads, maybe we're self-limiting on how much change we can actually do. If you're feeling especially motivated and stuff like that, you can go testify on issues that are important to you. And I know it's a drive down to the metro, but these are things you can participate in state government, and you can participate more than I think people think that they can. You're more powerful. Individuals are more powerful than I think they realize, and they can affect real change if they want to.
And in today's day and age as well, with technology and being connected.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you're not comfortable meeting with them, you can send an email. If you're not comfortable having
Right.
that type of conversation in person, there's multiple ways to reach out.
Shawn, we all know the meeting trap. You can spend your whole life in committee meetings and never really build a dang thing. So, what is your personal practice for staying grounded? How do you ensure you are actually moving projects from talk to execution?
I think the key point is one, try to limit your meeting time and try to hold to it. The other thing too is try to make sure that you're hitting the top key elements of the meeting that are most important to other people, the people that are engaged, people that want to participate. This, I guess, with me also, when it comes down to meetings, you really want to make sure that you're staying on task, essentially, and what the overall point of this conversation is. There's also a challenge of analysis by paralysis, or paralysis by analysis, I should say. I got that backwards. But essentially, you can overanalyze things to the point where essentially you stalled it out almost completely. So I think at some point in time, I've seen people very successfully put time limits on certain topics. Like I've seen some people limit the amount of conversation that can be had around a certain topic. There's traditional Robert's rules. You need a first and a second before you move into discussion. So there has to be at least enough interest by two people in order to even bring the conversation up. So there's a number of different controls you can put on too, to make sure that um, the conversation is going the way that essentially is structured in a way where everybody gets an opportunity to speak to it, but at the same time you're not dwelling on certain topics.
Those are great practical tips.
Yeah,
For the chamber director or the small business owner listening right now who feels like their town is stuck, what is one concrete step they might be able to take this week to start the kind of momentum you built in Virginia?
I think one of the biggest things is to talk to other businesses, talk to the community, reach out to individuals that are, I guess, for lack of a better term, like the anchor businesses or the anchor institutions of there, and try to get a feeling for what's going on. Um, the other thing too is social media can be slightly dangerous in this regard because sometimes the most vocal people for things one way or another way are not generally the people that would show up to actually do the work. Um, essentially, so there's a challenge in just using social media by itself, because it is sort of this locked box of people's opinions and things like that. So I think it's better to be more engaging with the community, go out and actually talk to individuals, get a feeling for how they're feeling about their city and what's going on. For a concrete thing, if you want something that can do your community, it varies widely by the type of community. For some people, it might be just emphasizing green space. It might be just downtown cleanup. Um, it might be decorating. It might be a variety of different things that would make the downtown more appealing to individuals to come down and participate, or to make the city a place you'd want to visit. We live in a very special place, and the
We
Upper
do.
Range and Duluth and Northeast Minnesota in general is typically one of the most beautiful places on earth to come visit and see. There's got to be something about your community that you can emphasize that is a positive. Um, One of the challenges, really, of being in a rural community is that we always tend to emphasize what we lack. Things we don't have that maybe an urban environment does have, and that's sort of perpetuated this narrative that all rural is urban that's missing some stuff. Um, this is incredibly not true. I mean, it's an entire different paradigm up here than in an urban center. So I think when you're talking about what to emphasize and what to promote, I think we shouldn't shy away from our ruralness, and we shouldn't consider it always to be a detriment, but rather think about what are the positive elements of being in Northeast Minnesota
Sure.
and kind of pushing that.
Word as a badge of honor.
Exactly. Instead of always worrying, it's not a scarcity situation. I mean, we
Yeah.
just have different we have different resources and different things that we can emphasize that'll show how great and how wonderful this area really is.
John, before we wrap up, to take this region's communities from where we are today to where we need to be, what would you say is the one bold we need to make to truly move forward?
I think our biggest challenge right now is demographics. I mean, when it boils right down to it, if you follow any issue back all the way to the beginning, it usually becomes a demographic issue. When you're talking about housing, we talk about the fact that it has negative impact on people, domestic and international migration to the area. When you talk about our workforce challenges, that ties directly back to our demographics. The fact that we have an older population here in Northeast Minnesota that is retiring and leaving the labor market, the baby boomers, and we have less people to replace them in those roles, and less people to offer the goods and services that those people are trying to consume as they're retiring. That ties directly back to demographics as well. If you talk about just about any issue that challenges Northeast Minnesota or challenges rural areas in general, almost always ties back to a demographic issue. So if there's one thing that I would do is I would emphasize things like we have Thrive Up North, we have Hello Range, we have all these initiatives that are essentially showing what a welcoming area, what a welcoming community we can be to new people coming to Northeast Minnesota. And I would emphasize those tools and support those tools as much as possible. And essentially, if we can address the demographics issue, I feel like that was subsequently addressed, kind of like to your point earlier about everything being a system. If we're able to tackle that, I think a lot of other dominoes will fall into place as well.
And if they move to northeastern Minnesota, they get you as a neighbor, Shawn.
Exactly. And I'm
not too bad. Shawn, thank you so much for being with us.
I appreciate the time. Thank you so much, Kevin, and for bringing me on this podcast.
Of course. And at Story North, we believe that the most important work in our region is often the hardest to explain. If you're leading an organization through that kind of complexity, where the mission is critical, but the message is getting lost in all the noise, that is where we come in. Story North doesn't just capture the work, we help you architect the narrative that scales it. You can find the full show notes and the video version of this conversation today at storynorthproductions.com. Until next time.